Antibiotics, I want you to know, are chemotherapy. They are. When they write you a prescription for antibiotics, I want you to think, I'm writing you a prescription for chemo. So that you go, whoa, doc, come on, it's just an infection here. Chemo, really? Because this is a severe consequence that can occur if you don't know what's happening with antibiotics. And there are many things in nature that can help you overcome an infection that is genuinely there, even though it's not truly caused by the infectious agent as much as the terrain imbalance due to deficiency, toxicity, etc. So if we look at the intestinal lining or any epithelial tissue, ultimately it comes down to a single lining, a layer of a cellular lining or barrier. If you put an inflammatory compound in there, which antibiotic is obviously just like napalm, you know, you can take out the jungle with napalm, and in many ways you take out the jungle of your own gut. If you see on the top right, a healthy, normal, the villi are just up there. It's like a rainforest for your microbiological life, if you will, the microbiome. And you see with antibiotics and pesticides and herbicides, glyphosate, all of these things, just mow it down. It's not just about killing the bacteria, you're destroying the home for the bacteria. So when you put, and somebody says probiotics are great, but you can't put probiotics in this desert any more than you can take the critters that live in the jungle out and then napalm their jungle and then put them back and expect them to live. That's not their home anymore. So we have to restore integrity to the terrain itself. And that's where I want to go. There's some things I want to share with you in the little time I have with you. Oxidative stress, you've heard about this. This is inflammatory substances. If you're putting food that has some good stuff but also has some bad stuff because it's grown with pesticides, you've got a battle. Your body's going, I want the good stuff, but I got to deal with the bad stuff. So part of your cells are in fight or flight. The other's trying to go, let's get me at that nutrition. And so you're always in battle. And if you haven't already committed to eating organically and non-GMO, you're in conflict with your own body. I want you to think about how important it is to grow your own food. And I know it's even on this planet, the most pristine organic, it's not totally that way. Our environment has degraded. But we have a great ability and resilience to overcome a small amount even over time. It's just you start adding to that mix and it's overwhelming. And then you see what is evidence of that? Chronic disease. From mild to severe. Cancer, neurological degradation. So we've got to deal with oxidative stress. Of course, when we talk about restoring the terrain, I want everybody, does everybody grow a garden already? Everybody, hands up if you're growing something? Okay. This should be by next year. Kristen, if they don't grow a garden, they're not allowed back. Okay? Just saying. So molecular hydrogen, the first element on the periodic table of elements is amazing. It's in water, H2O. Molecular hydrogen is one of the most profound tools that we can use to reduce inflammation. It's a selective antioxidant. It's not harmful. It's not a harmful free radical in any way. In fact, it can combine with hydroxyl radicals and neutralize them. But it's also has qualities that help it to repair gut and increase cognitive function. And Lord knows we need to increase cognitive function in our culture, do we not? Yes. Critical thinking skills have long been lost, and that's partly due to our abandonment of principles. Over 750 studies have been done. If you go to hydrogenstudies.com, you can see a lot of it. If you want to learn how the first element on the periodic table of elements in water, utilized by a specific device to do that, can make everything you're doing work better. All the things you're already doing work better. Hydrogen acts as a therapeutic antioxidant by selectively reducing cytotoxic oxygen radicals. These are peer-reviewed medical journals that have put out this information that make us made me very keenly interested in how do I get the hydrogen into me, and I drink it every day with the hydrogen water. The production of hydrogen water, you use an electrolytic process, and that alters the water also in different ways in terms of its potential for providing rapidly a terrain that is more beneficial for the healthy microflora. So the growth of good anaerobic microflora is enhanced by drinking this kind of water with hydrogen. Interesting, when we talk about cancer, there was a study done where they used a form of chemotherapy, which is called 5-fluorouracil, and they tried it on colon cancer. And then when they added the hydrogen into the mix, it suddenly worked like never before. And I'm thinking, if that was the case, why did you need the chemo, right? And knowing the initials of this particular chemo agent, you can understand why you don't want to take it. It's shortened to 5FU. So clearly, that's truth in labeling. There's so much information about hydrogen as a therapeutic tool. And again, it's the most abundant just about in the universe. If you can easily transform your water to provide it for you, you don't need a lot. about 0.3 to 0.5 ppm is considered a therapeutic concentration. It doesn't stay for long. In fact, you produce it in a healthy gut. You produce hydrogen. But very few of us have a healthy gut, much less eat food that is conducive for the production, like non-soluble fibers, to interact with our microflora to produce hydrogen gas, which is used by the body as well. Most of us just toot it on out. That's possible as well. So we've got that. Here's my buddy Paul Bertier. Some of you met him last night. He has Synergy Science. Just a couple of blocks up the road, he's got a building right there next to doTERRA. And I've got information at my table out front. Now I want to give you a little sneak preview. I am working on, and I'm almost completed with, an introduction to clinical homeopathy. I'm doing a lecture on demand for Trinity School of Natural Health. And this will be available hopefully in the next month or so. And the approach that I learned that saved my life in homeopathy was known as clinical, or the French approach, based on the technique of drainage. Drainage is a fancy way of saying drainage, right? Because, you know, if I want to go be a plumber, I'm going to do it in France because I can tell everybody I work with drainage. I'm like, cool, like drainage, what are you? No, plumbers are awesome. In fact, they're probably one of the most important, like along with sanitation. If you want to thank somebody that's keeping us all alive, it's the sanitation workers, the garbage men and women. But the first approach is this concept of drainage. And I'm going to give you a three-pronged approach. When you work with homeopathy, you can work classically, you can work with constitutional therapies, you can work with nosodes and homeoprophylaxis. What I'm teaching you about, was there something funny there? Oh yeah, the first question you should ask your doctor if you have one or you want one is, how often do you have a bowel movement? And that will disqualify him right then and there. Don't go any further. It's like, you go only that many times? I think I'll go somewhere else. So I want to enhance excretory function. The number one starting point for healing is get the garbage out, right? Talk about the garbage man. If it ain't getting out, it's in you, and now it creates kind of a cesspool of what? A new terrain. And guess what grows at a garbage patch, right? Oh, there's a lot of flies and other nasty things that are scary, but they weren't there until the garbage started piling up, right? Keep sweeping it under the rug and wondering, what is that smell, right? And so we want to enhance liver, kidneys, lymph function. And there are three of my favorite remedies. It's not an exhaustive list, y'all, but Bryonia, Nux vomica, Chelidonium. You can utilize them in low attenuations every day, every night, before bedtime. Help to enhance the liver and do its job, and everything else benefits from there. And I work with complexes because there's a lot going on and a lot of synergistic systems that I can work with that way. Then we go to assimilation. Elimination, get the stuff out. Now you have room for, hey, we got pathways in, right? We got to bring the nutrients in. You're taking all the best supplements in the world and they're not getting in you because, remember the picture of the intestines I showed you? Your terrain was decimated. Oh, I'm taking probiotics. It's like, but they're going right through you. Why? It's not their fault. You give them a desert when they need a jungle. It's not hard to understand. I can talk to fourth graders. They go, oh man, that makes sense. In fact, it's harder to teach doctors this stuff. They're overeducated or indoctrinated. And then we got inflammation, systemic, localized, etc. Dealing with skeletal inflammation, degradation of skeletal integrity, connective tissue integrity. Now, granted, there are definitely mineral deficiencies involved here, but those were partly brought on by the fact that your assimilation capacity was corrupted because your detoxification capacity was corrupted. You're putting all this stuff in a body that can't even function. It's in fight or flight. It's fighting for its life with all the garbage you're giving it. Love yourself enough to give yourself the best. God loves you enough. Heavenly Father loves you enough. Do you love yourself enough to give yourself what you need to be healthy, to regain that health? Or are you going to spit in God's face and go, I'm not worthy? Man, that's got to hurt. My child, not worthy. Where do they get that belief? It was not from God. It was programmed by those who want us to live in fear, and they want to control us through that fear and drug us. Cognitive dissonance, anybody, again. Skeletal, I talk about rust tox, colchicum, ruta, again, not exhaustive list. Vascular, you can do some of the snake venoms, vipera, crataegus, which is the hawthorn berry. Great things that we can do to address inflammation systemically. I'm going to have to run through this pretty quickly. And then I come to the great accelerator. Silver. God bless silver. When I found that out, I was nervous because I was detoxifying kids from heavy metals. So I thought, silver, maybe, maybe not. But I encountered a manufacturer of bioactive silver hydrosol. This is an electron microscope photograph, 100,000 times magnified, 110,000 in fact. And you'll see that the particles of silver are so small that you need very little to achieve a lot due to the surface area and the ion activity. And the active state of silver is the ion in the body. That is the only active state. And so by utilizing the purest, you can use the least amount, never result in any toxicity whatsoever. You won't turn blue. And I use this bioactive silver hydrosol for regeneration as well, not just infections and things. Because yes, instead of an antibiotic, yeah, absolutely silver's better. But if you see these electron microphotographs, 200 ppm is more than what I use, but most of those are so garbaged and glommed together that there's very little bioactivity. So don't be fooled into thinking, oh, if a little is good, more is better. That's an old way of thinking. If a little is great and can be, more can be toxic. And so we want to use the least amount to get the best benefit. And that's why I use the silver hydrosol. I've got some information about that too. It's anti-inflammatory. It has site-specific tissue inflammation reduction properties, including reducing or decreasing tumor necrosis alpha production, which is really great. So these are, again, scientifically validated, identified properties of silver in this case. It also accelerates tissue regeneration and reduces the potential for scar tissue formation, which if any of you use silver topically on a burn or a severe cut or scrape, it would normally scar. If you use it through healing, it's like it never happened. It's amazing. But some of you will have a question about the effect on healthy tissue, which is a good question. Does silver harm healthy mammalian cells? And I came across a newspaper article from the USA Today that said silver nanoparticles harm the gastrointestinal cells, the lining of the gut. And I mean, here I am using silver to heal epithelial, gastrointestinal tissue and external tissue, and suddenly the USA Today says, you're harming people. And I thought, no, that's crazy. That doesn't make sense. That's not what I've seen. And it turns out they were half right, but the epithelial cells that silver was harming were epithelial cancer cells. Do you think they made a mistake? Was that like an editorial, oops, we didn't know that? No, it's on purpose. Because you also have the ability to utilize silver against cancer cells without harming your healthy cells. Epithelial tissue regeneration, this is a study between silver nanoparticles and silver sulfadiazine, which is used in hospitals. By day 25 in an animal burn wound model, it's like it never happened. But what about the impact on the microbiome? Because that's fair, right? Silver is an antimicrobial, it's not an antibiotic. Will it harm the gut bacteria? Well, in this analysis, and others have been done since then, it does not, in fact, harm biodiversity, which is the key. Yes, it reduces overall bacterial counts, but in a uniform way, so it can address something that's way out of balance and bring it all to a safe level so recovery is possible. Unlike an antibiotic, which is totally indiscriminate and then gives rise to what? Opportunistic microorganisms. Clostridium difficile, C. diff, or in the stomach, we talk H. pylori, things like that. Silver does not disrupt the biodiversity, and that is key. So here's the protocol, y'all. This is the money shot. I got two versions of the money shot for you. I utilize the bioactive silver hydrosol for healing the gut. What took me 2 years to do, I can now do in 2 months or less, even with people that are, well, the chapter in the book, and it's available for free download on my website at robertscottbell.com, but it's in here as well. It's called The Road to Colostomy Bags is Paved with Antibiotics and Prednisone. Talk to any gastroenterologist, they'll sheepishly admit, what do we got? When that stuff's working, we got to resection you. Even at that last moment, we can restore integrity to the terrain because God has given us the substances of creation, including minerals like silver and aloe vera in this case, to help carry the silver into the gut 3 times a day on an empty stomach. Probiotic replenishment at night. There are other adjuncts I talk about, the hydrogen we talked about. There are other products out there. By the way, I don't sell any products because I want to be able to speak freely about all these things. If I sell them, then they suddenly go, oh, you're not allowed to say that. The only thing I have is a book. So here's the second version of the same thing you're just seeing. Some people see it differently, so I wanted to give you that. And of course, the homeopathics. Again, I did it with homeopathy and organic food. It took me 2 years. This can take you 2 months or less. From mild candida, 2 weeks, to severe inflammation, colitis, Crohn's. I've not seen anything have to go beyond 8 weeks. The only failures in this protocol is if people still eat glyphosate-containing foods, pesticide-laden foods. It's like, how do you compete, right? Ultimately, they're damaging while you're trying to heal them. Other things to replenish the terrain. I believe we are supposed to get our minerals from food. We are designed that way, primarily, as far as nutrition. So I use 100% whole food nutrient sources, and there are supplements that do that. Right now, if you are afraid of COVID or any virus, there's no reason to be, but you should be afraid if you're not minerally proficient enough. Because in the absence of selenium, any and all virus or exosomal activity is unbounded, unstoppable. When you bring selenium back into the system, it's like birth control for viruses if you're scared of viruses. It stops them from replicating. Selenium. There was a study that came out of China that was republished through University of Hawaii I covered on my show. The areas in China where there was massive amounts of available selenium in the soils and the food, they had no COVID issues. Whether you believe COVID's the cause or not, that's just what I want to let you know. Where it was most deficient, that's where they had the worst scenarios occurring, including in Italy, interestingly enough. So there are other things that I talk about regularly on my show and in the book that you can get information on how to transform your terrain. Not because you're lucky, but because you're following the principles that were laid down for all of us to embrace. And that includes eating real food that is not contaminated in poison and not looking at any symptom, in fact, as evidence of a drug deficiency. Because there's no such thing. No such thing. Now, this device up here is to depolarize the 5th generation and beyond, 5G and otherwise. Depolarize the field, protect you. It produces a stable torus field of electrons in your environment. It doesn't dissipate, continue. And in that case, you're so flooded and saturated externally and even internally that 5G wave impacts with the electrons on you instead of penetrating into you. And there are larger forms. That top one is what I have at home for the whole house. And when we brought that in to our home in Florida at the time, my wife had suffered through many years of trigeminal neuralgic pain from a dental extraction gone wrong. And by noon every day, she would retreat into the bedroom and darken it and just hide away from the world until having to come out later for dinner. And we put this in our house, and in 24 hours, she was up at 2 in the afternoon, 3 in the afternoon, working around the house. And I said, honey, what's going on? Shouldn't you be in the bedroom hiding? And she just looked at me. She's like, I don't even know. I'm just doing what I do. 2 weeks later, I was out on a double date with my best friend Paul and his wife, with my wife. We hadn't done that in years. And that because we don't realize the invisible stuff that's hammering us all the time is depleting us and impacting mitochondrial function. And so that's another aspect of the terrain we're dealing with, even the invisible part. So there we go. Rocking the health world, 2 hours a day, 6 days a week. There's more to talk about, but I've run out of time. And so I would say thank you to my friends at Natural Immunogenics. They make the Argentyn 23 and Sovereign Silver. And if you'll catch my show 1 to 3 this Mountain Time, Monday through Friday, and Sundays 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. And I'll be here afterwards talking and answering questions. But for now, I got to go. But the power to heal is yours. What? Yeah, the show is available online, all over. Just go to robertscottbell.com. The power to heal is yours. It's the God's honest truth. I'm reminding myself just as I'm reminding you. Thank you, Kristen, for inviting me. Yeah, you're amazing. You really are putting this on. This is a miracle right here. Really. Yeah, thank you. Thanks to the whole team.